Is there a problem with this? Because I don't see it, but they might. To be honest, the text in Yu-Gi-Oh cards has been kind of a problem for new players for a while. Every time they see a card, it's always like, TLDR mucho texto, and then they proceed to misplay. And I've been playing this game for a few years now, kinda like almost 10. So I guess I just kinda got used to how to read the cards. And I don't blame new players, cause sometimes they do exaggerate with the amount of text there is on the card. Nowadays, a lot of monsters in your deck will have at least 3 effects. And it can vary between summoning restrictions or hard once per turns or the actual effects that your monster has. But once you understand that a lot of cards have the same kind of restrictions, then it becomes a lot easier, but it's still a lot of words. Let's take a card for example that can be broken down into sections. For example, let's take this card, Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous. It's kind of a newer card, released in like 2021, and its effect can be broken down by sections. First, it's its summoning effect or requirement. In this case, it's just an effect that can activate when your opponent has more monsters than you do. Then it's followed by saying that you can only do it once. Its first effect can be summarized by that. And then we have the next restriction that says that you can only use each effect once. So then you have its actual effect. So quick effect, you can tribute discard, special summon 1 Sword Soul or 1 Fallen of Alba's monster from your deck or hand. And during the end phase, if a fusion monster was sent to your graveyard this turn, add this card from the graveyard to your hand. While it can be broken down into sections, it's still a lot of words to say, not a lot of stuff. But breaking it down by sections like that makes it easier to read, in my opinion. But for new players, they don't have that habit. And it's funny because in the Japanese version of cards, they actually numbered their effects, so it's easier to know how many effects a card has. So for example, the same card has a number in each effect. But for some reason over here, the TCG hasn't done that yet. It could potentially help a lot of people read the cards properly, instead of slamming it on the field without knowing what it actually does. But we also have other examples of how they could organize their text. For example, we have Rush Duels. While Rush Duels are a simpler version of the game, they do this thing where they write the requirement first and then they apply the effect next. They're kind of in a different font, or they're bolded. I don't know how to say this. It makes it clear to players what is the requirement to activate the card. I don't know if that's something they could implement into the game to make it clearer to new players or even the casual players. Because it's kind of hard to convince someone to play a casual game of Yu-Gi-Oh! If the cards have a wall of text on them that you have to read entirely to understand what it does. It would help if they could at least make it clear how many effects a card has. Now, from what I've been seeing online too, a lot of people suggest to implement some kind of keywords to the game, and they've already made some keywords for the game. I could definitely see some more keywords being implemented into the cards. But for example, for now we have GY, that is the graveyard, we have piercing, which replaced the whole if the difference between the attack and defense is higher, you still inflict damage. You see, that's a lot of words to just say one thing, so now we've abbreviated it to piercing. And we also have banish, which was removed from play. So over the years, they've already made a bunch of effort to reduce the text on the cards, but there's still a long way to go. I've seen a lot of people want it to be kinda like Magic the Gathering. I haven't played much of Magic the Gathering, but there is a list of keywords that they use for specific effects. I don't know if it can be applied the same way to Yu-Gi-Oh! I feel like some things can be applied though. You see, there's always a once per turn or a hard once per turn now to a lot of new cards. So if you could abbreviate that to something else to alleviate the text on the card, for example, we could say like OPT once per turn or once per each turn, OPET, something like that, I don't know. Another thing that also puts a lot of words on the cards without being necessary are the names of the cards. I know why they do that, because they don't want players to put another copy of the same card and being able to use the same effect, even if it says once per turn. But a good example of that is the DDD, Super Doom King Purple Armageddon. Just the name itself takes at least like a line of text in its effect. So maybe we could put something else, a keyword to say that it specified the name of this card. Something like, I don't know, NOTC, name of, not very imaginative, but name of this card, there you go. That should at least remove a line of text on the card. Okay, so let's take a card and try to put some keywords in it that make sense and that can reduce the text on the card. Alright, here we go. For this example, I chose Black Luster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning. It's an older card that still receives some kinds of text changes over the years, so I decided to do it again. What I tried to reduce most was the summoning condition, and I also tried to abbreviate the once per turn. I feel like for the most part, those are the kinds of effect that we have to find a way to abbreviate. Otherwise, the card is bloated with text. Now, the bad thing about doing this, actually, is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is already a pretty complicated game, and adding another layer to new players for them to learn might reduce the player base. Like, we might complain that there's a lot of text on the card, but at least we don't have to look up every keyword that is on them, and also having to memorize everything. Like, everything is pretty much explained on the card. You don't need to look up anywhere else, except the rulings. But they don't count. But having the card effects explained like that on the cards makes it easier for someone to just read the card and being able to play the card. So any returning player might be able to read the card and just apply what it says, and they could just pick up the game without having to memorize a bunch of things again. Well, again, except the new mechanics. But it is obvious that they need to find a way to reduce the text on the cards, because otherwise it's gonna be a lot harder to get new players into the game. But it seems that they're kind of focused on Rush Duels right now, which I haven't played much, and I kind of want to try it out now. Let me know if you have any type of suggestions that they could implement into the game so that they could reduce the amount of words on the cards. Wordy ass game.